Michael McIntyre is back. So exciting for me because, you know, you're like this vast empire of knowledge about business and leadership. And I run a church, kind of. And so a church is like a business. A lot of people don't understand that.
Yeah, but there's revenue there. So, you know, yes, it is a business.
You know, it's got people.
And you pay out salaries.
Yeah, I mean, human resources. It's got departments.
That's
it's
right.
got, you know, performance.
There's a hierarchy.
There's a hierarchy.
Yeah.
And so it's actually structured just like a business would be structured. Now,
Yes.
you know, we deal in souls.
That's right.
And God, and so we keep it spiritual, but at the same time it has all those elements.
Yeah, totally, it does. And I think, you know, one of the things that I've learned since giving my life to the Lord is, and coming into church business, so to speak, it was really astonishing to me how people look at it differently inside that, especially the people who are in the church, that are working for the church and doing things for the church, because they look at it as a lifetime appointment.
Right.
It's like, it's kind of like
it's a charity.
It is, and it's also, you know, you still have to show up. You still have a part of that, in that, just like in the marketplace, you have to perform. Mm-hmm. You have to bring results.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things that, for me, working with church leadership is like, look, there is at a point in this process that you do need to, you know, you need to be on time, you need to show up, you need to give, you need to produce results. Yes, it's great to soak, it's great to be in the presence, but somebody's got to get up and sweep.
And I love that. There's got to be results.
Yes.
So when you're sowing, you've got to also be reaping.
That's
it's
right.
not just sowing. You don't just show up and kind of keep things status quo.
Right.
But you're actually supposed to be producing results, which means that it should be furthering the kingdom, it should be multiplying, it should be growing, whether it's departmentally, whether it's organizationally, in whatever way, it's got to be producing something.
Yeah, there's got to be fruit. And, you know, like Jesus, when he would do things, when he gave you parables and these things, it produced fruit.
Right.
And it made people think and stop and say, oh, okay, how does this affect me? How do I show up in life? So as a church, it is a business, because there does need to be fruit, because there's so many dead churches out there.
Right.
There's so many churches that are dead and dying. Some of them don't even know it. You know, it's like the proverbial frog in the pot. They don't know it's boiling. They think it's a jacuzzi, and it's not. Because at some point, it's going to be like, ruh-roh.
Wait, my leg just fell off. What happened?
This is bad. So you've got to make sure, and it's spiritual. Yes, it's wonderful to come inside that leadership, but also there has to be an understanding that this is a job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point, because as a community, even really as a business, you work with these people every day. So, and we're in the kingdom business, and if you're kingdom minded, then you're family minded.
Yep.
And so you invest in people, you know their stories, you love them, you know some of them, you know, but you love them.
Yes.
You know, because you see the gold in them if you're kingdom. But there are times when God is moving them on that you have to be able to say, we've got to part ways.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's not working anymore.
Yeah, and so, and being in, you know, I'm a business guy, and
Oh yeah, give your bio real quick.
well,
for those that don't know you.
Yes. So I started out born and raised in Michigan. I left there as soon as I could. Joined the United States Air Force when I was 17. Spent 4 years in Strategic Air Command. I went to college full time, got my degree, moved to Dallas, Texas, got into sales, did really good, and created an insurance agency, a $3 billion agency from scratch. Had over 20,000 agents recruited, and so then I gave my life to Jesus, and I, as I always say, on the road to Damascus, I got knocked off my Bentley. And so I had a radical encounter with the Lord, and and so I sold my business in 2007 and started following Jesus, and never looked back. And so then I started hanging out with, I started going to a Bible church, which was great, fed me well. I learned so much about Jesus. And it was one of those times, I remember, my heart was all in, but my business mind was 75%. It was like, okay, wait a minute, something's not adding up here. Something doesn't add up. And so I was at church, and they had a guest speaker. I never knew this man. I was probably, an 18-month-old Christian. And this guy named Lee Strobel came in and spoke.
Oh, I love him.
Okay, so Lee Strobel gets up there and walks this whole thing in his journey to Jesus, because he was a cynic, he was skeptical, he was an atheist.
Yeah.
And that was it. That bridged that gap. And so once that happened, it was like I was all in.
Wow.
So that's kind of my quick background on that.
Well, and so now you have an organization called Next Level Experience. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so it's under the heading of McIntyre, which is our name, and Next Level Experience. And so what we do is we come in we do a lot of different things. One of the things we do is coaching, as you know, and which we really enjoy coaching. I really enjoy moving the needle, and a lot of times people say, what do you do in the coaching? We take a holistic approach. We want to look at your physical, because your temple's important, right? Taking care of your temple, as we were talking about before camera. But your temple's important. Relationships are important with your husband, with your wife, with your children, with the people at work, with your pastor, with your church community. Also, your spiritual is very important.
Yeah.
How are you showing up in the kingdom with the Lord?
Right.
And are you praying? Are you in the Word? And then, of course, financial. We base everything off John 10:10. The enemy came to kill, steal, and destroy, but Jesus came to give us life abundant. And everybody's abundant is different.
Yeah.
So we teach people, we coach people in staying out of the comparison spirit, because there's no there. Okay?
Right.
There's only mammon there.
Right.
And so we teach that. And then
It's really good.
then we have this 3-day NLE Next Level Experience, which again, it's not for snowflakes.
You should go.
It's intense.
It is intense.
You will be offended.
And it's really worth your while.
But it's all about Jesus. It's all about the Holy Spirit. It's all about the Heavenly Father. And that's our main thing at Next Level Experience is that 3-day. And it's really cool because we don't charge money up front. So we've taken that out of the equation. So because a lot of times the enemy, Satan loves to say things about money, right? And so we take that out of the equation. At the end of it, we have a pay it forward opportunity. If you feel it was worth something, great. If it was worth nothing to you, great. There's no obligation. But so with that, it's really exploded. And talking about a tipping point, it's really been amazing in our community. So and I just want to touch base real quick back on the thing about church leadership. And I think one of the big things that happens is in church leadership, inside the actual people who are getting paid a salary working at the church, we've done a lot of clear the decks with different churches.
Now, explain what clear the decks is.
Yeah, clear the decks is like, it's a terminology that sailors use, okay? And like, if they're going up, say if it's going to be rough seas, they say clear the decks. They get everything off the deck that could go overboard, or it could trip up somebody and hurt somebody when the seas get rough, right? So it clear the decks is kind of a sailor's word. But what we use it as is we do a family clear the decks, we do corporate clear the decks, and leadership. Everybody gets to say what they need to say, right? And everybody gets to floor.
And nobody gets offended.
Nobody gets offended. And so we go in deep. And clear the decks is really, really important. Because I remember the first time I did it in a Charismania church. And I warned the pastor going in and said, listen, you need to pray your heart up. You need, pray for this. He goes, oh man, no, we're good. We're all good. These guys are all good. Oh man, he came out of that deal after 4 hours, looked like George Custer, man. He had an arrow everywhere. He had no idea.
Yeah.
But it was so good because what happens inside these churches, and it's not intentional, it just naturally happens. Everybody loves Jesus. Everybody's Holy Spirit filled. They're all in. They love Jesus. And so they feel they cannot criticize somebody. They can't rebuke somebody, or they can't have pushback or blowback. And so therefore there's no real going on.
Which is crazy because 2 Timothy tells us to do that.
Exactly.
Very clearly says, I want you to preach the gospel. I want you to correct. I want you to rebuke. And I want you to encourage. Well, two of those is really, hey, you're doing it wrong.
Right.
And there needs to be a lot more of that in the church. And if there were a lot more of that in the church, I think that we would all avoid the ditches, but we end up falling into the ditch all the time because there's nobody there to say, hey, you need to stop doing that.
Exactly. And that's so good because, usually when people come to work at a church, they admire the pastor, the senior pastor, right? They really love them, they admire them, they've really helped them somehow, which is great. Or the worship leader, they relate to that person. And so when they get into that, it's almost like they don't want to say anything, and they're just going to go along because they don't want any offense.
Or they want to have a culture of honor, which is good.
Right.
But there really needs to be a clear the decks when you do this. This is what happens. And so everything has a cause and effect in business. And if you're going to if you're going to start moving forward, if you're going to start growing your organization, you've got to have those kind of hard meetings. And so that's something that I love that you do. But you also mentor a lot of what you call the C's.
Yeah. So we generally deal with C-level people. Chief executive officer, chief financial officer, chief operation officer, chief marketing officer. Or entrepreneurs that have their own company or business, because we have other people that help other people, but Stacy and I really want to move the needle in his kingdom drastically. And so if we have an influencer that maybe they have a company with 20 employees or 100 employees or 1,000 employees, I love to pour into them. And look, we often say, our job as coaches is we help people see the things they don't want to see.
Yeah.
Tell them things they don't want to hear, have them do things they don't want to do, so they become the men and women God meant them to be.
Right.
And that's coaching.
Right, and you've done a great job. I've actually benefited from your coaching. You coached me for 4 months, and I tell people all the time, it's like getting punched in the face every day. Which,
really.
which you really need. I mean, you really do need somebody to hold up a mirror. And I remember several times you saying this to me, why do you do that? Why do you do that? Why do you do that? And so you were putting your finger on things that as leaders and as CEOs or senior pastors, we get into a rut. And we just kind of call it in because we are naturally gifted leaders.
That's right.
And you were pushing me, and as you do other people, you push them beyond their own fences that they've built to live within. And you go, no, you can actually go beyond that because there's more territory to take. Stop being satisfied where you are. Why do you do things the way you're doing? Because if you would just make these slight changes, then you can really start to advance.
Yeah. No, it's good. And what we call that is stretching.
Yeah.
Okay. So we stretch people. We want people also to step into the gap, get out of their comfort zone, step into the gap, because that's where life really is in the gap.
Yeah.
Because so many of us get caught up in the comfort zone.
Yeah.
And the reason why, because it's comfortable.
Yeah. We're creatures of habit.
Right.
This feels good. I can kind of sit back and enjoy mediocrity.
Right.
Because nobody's really putting pressure on me.
Right.
And then the Holy Spirit shows up and
That's
starts
right.
saying, really? Really?
Is
this it? Because I'm pretty sure I asked for the nations, and this ain't that.
Right. It's not. Tom Brady. I always refer back to Tom Brady. He's one of the greatest quarterbacks. I love him. I think he's great. At 44 years old, he's just incredible. But after every set of downs, after every day, he still goes to the movie room. He still gets coached. They still look at film plays. What happened during that? Why did you throw that interception? You missed that. You didn't read the defense correctly. I mean, we all need that.
Right.
We all need that. And as a senior pastor like yourself, there's not too many people that challenge you. And so, and that's what we do. We come in there and we challenge.
Right.
And it's not easy, but it's for people who really want to express more, and they know there's more in there. But we need coaching. My wife coaches me.
Yeah.
And she's
a baller.
Oh man, it's like all in,
Yeah.
And I used to get offended by it, but now I just say, okay, God, I know why I married her.
Yeah.
That you brought us together, because she's the one that can bring me to where I need to go. Because otherwise I would sit, I would. Like you said, you're so good, your half doing it is other people's 100%.
Right.
but God didn't put you in charge of this church or do this because, and if you go all in, that's when the needle really moves.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, and in the parable of the sower of the seed, there is a 30, 60, and 100-fold return. And 30 is good.
Right.
30-fold return on an investment is good.
It's really good.
60 is amazing. But if you're made like a racehorse, you got to go for the 100.
Yeah.
You know, and that's when having somebody come alongside you
Mm-hmm.
that has your kind of push. And I call you an ox all the time. I know that kind of makes you mad, but you're a pusher. You're always like, why aren't you still pushing? And you're like, well, I'm kind of tired from pushing. No, you've got to push, and that's where you get the 100-fold return.
Yeah.
Now I know for just using Storehouse as a case study, we have grown probably. I think you did the numbers, but about 169% in 6 months, which is incredible. So I want to talk a little bit about that today.
Sure.
Because when you experience that kind of growth, you can have, and some of my people have said this to me, change fatigue.
Oh yeah.
So there's a little, but for me, I love change. I love when things are moving, and it almost feels like velocity. There's this velocity things that's happening. It's kind of like you're racing a car, a convertible, and the wind is hitting you, and you have no sunglasses on, and it's just like your hair's blowing back, and everything is moving, and people are manifesting, and so you just have a lot of mess, you know. But out of that is coming this order, and so how do we? Or how does any organization, when you're in a time of advancing, how do you continue to put the fire or you keep it in fifth gear and continue to advance? Or is it necessary to kind of pull it back some? I mean, so I'm kind of in that tension right now because I'm at a tipping point, and I know I'm at a tipping point. How do I manage this tipping point right now?
Yeah.
Do I pull back? Or do I push forward?
Yeah, so it's a good question. And so I relate back to when I think I was 24, back in the Stone Age. And I remember I had one of my biggest weeks ever in the insurance business. I made like $22,000 in 1 week. It was really a big week. This is back when 22 grand meant something.
Yeah, right.
And so, and so I go to, I'm meeting my father-in-law, and who was my mentor. And I loved him, and he was a master. And look, I loved him because he loved me, but he really was on me, you know, because he loved his daughter so much, and that he wanted the best for her. And so I remember going to lunch with him, and I was all about myself. Like, hey man, not only did I hit a home run, I hit a grand slam, bases loaded. It was awesome. So I said, Jack, his name was Jack, I said, man, I had a great week. He says, how much did you make? I said, $22,000. And he's eating, right? We're at Houston's, my favorite restaurant. He's eating. He looks after me and says, okay, son, now it's time to pour the coals to it.
Wow. And you're like, I mean, you're probably pretty worn out at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I was waiting for, man, that was so awesome. Why don't you take my daughter, you guys go to Mexico for a week and enjoy yourself? No. Now is the time to pour the coals to it. And the reason he did that, and I'm so grateful he did, and I kind of welled up because it was like, I was wanting a different love from him. Mm-hmm. I was wanting him to come up and put his arm around me and say, man, I'm so proud of you, hold my face and tell me how much he loves me. But he wasn't that kind of guy.
Yeah.
He just wasn't. He was like, okay, because he knew what was in me. He saw more in me than I saw in myself.
Right.
So when I tell people like yourself, and I think we just had a conversation here, before, and I said, listen, go ahead and let's do this as if it's already here.
Right.
Okay, and so to answer your questions, yes, sometimes change fatigue happens. It does, but that's okay because it will come back around, and the Holy Spirit will make room and adjust everybody's heart for that. And eventually they'll say, man, because I've always said, the only time change will ever occur is when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change. And so when that happens, that's when the change occurs. And there's going to be some people that's not going to be able to make the corner. They won't be able to make the turn. And that's a natural attrition for people getting off. And as to our earlier conversation, when that happens in business, I would sit down there and say, the first thing I'd bring them in my office because I know that this is not their purpose anymore, okay? We've either outgrown them or they don't want to grow anymore with us.
Right.
And I would say, hey, Bill, this is a great day for you. This is so good. Really? Why? Because I'm going to let you go find your purpose. Because it's not here. And I don't want to hold you back. Jack Welch taught me this.
Yeah.
Okay, Jack Welch, CEO of GE. He said, if we hold people in a place where they're not performing at 100%, that's not of him.
Right. It's so true. And that's hard. And it's not like this is what I told someone. I said, this isn't a divorce. But we're grandparents, you and I.
Right.
And so we know what it's like to be a family and to have a daughter that gets married. So it's not that she stops being a daughter, and that's about the family of God. It's not that we stop being brothers and sisters in Christ, or mothers and daughters, or sons. It's that you're now going to go over here, and you've grown.
That's right.
And so the relationship changes slightly. You're not living in my house anymore, but we're still connected. We're still related.
That's really good.
But now you're going to go, and you're going to do a different thing. You're not just a daughter living under the house of the father, but you're now a married woman with your own house, and so the position has changed.
That's right.
And so the same thing, I mean, people will max out where they are, or like you said, because the expectation has changed, or the job description, or you're pushing on stuff, it may be that God has something else for them.
That's right.
And like you said, don't stand in the way.
Right. That's so good, Tracy. And what I love that you do, the way you love so well your people. You do. And the other thing that you do is speak truth to them, even though the truth might hurt. And you're not afraid of that. And I think that's because you've got a secular background, and you come into this, you gave your life to Jesus, and you're all in. And that is a unique thing, because it's rare. Yeah. And that's what I told you about. You've got to write this book.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to do this.
I'm working on that.
And listen, it's not easy.
I hate writing books. For everybody out there who's an author, who's written a book, I'm telling you, we get it. We know. You've written a book recently.
Yes.
Now, you've written your autobiography.
Yes.
And it's called?
The Next Level Life.
Right. And it's amazing. It's hilarious.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I think laughter is one of those things that's really the church needs more of.
No kidding.
You know, you've seen me in front of your room.
Yeah.
You know, I love to help people release that tension. And laughing gives you the same endorphins as crying, and it's a healer.
Yeah.
You know, in fact, if you ever come out of a place where you've laughed just had a knee slapper, right?
Right.
Or you had a major cry, you look in a mirror, you just took 5 years off your face.
Right.
You know,
yeah,
and
you're flushing emotion.
You are, and the endorphins are just coming in. And so I think laughter is a lot of fun. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Anyway, great book. You need to get it. Next Level Life. Okay, so I wanted to kind of go through these tipping point, these 4 things in a tipping point. And I wanted you to kind of address each one because it's so true. Because when you start to grow, again, tensions come up, and no matter whether I'm making widgets or I'm making disciples. You're dealing with people. Right. And so you're creating an organization or an organism, in our case, because we're charismatic. It's an organism. And so, but you're dealing with people. So everybody gets that, okay? So 4 things in a tipping point, okay? And this is from the Harvard Business Review.
Good
there
review.
are all of these hurdles: the cognitive hurdle, the political hurdle, the motivational hurdle, and the resource hurdle. So I want you to deal first with, okay, so we've decided we're going to the next level. You're the next level guy.
Right.
And you talked me through this next level, and you actually walked me through a lot of these. So let's talk about the cognitive hurdle.
Okay.
Because here's the thing that you say. And this really goes to the political and to the cognitive hurdle. You said you've got to have your aces in their places.
Yes.
So you really talk about the level of skill and intelligence, gifting, but also just if they're a fit, politically, are they a fit?
Right, yeah. So, And one of the things I like to do when I come into an organization, first thing I want to do is let's see your job description. I want them to write their own job description because how do they see themselves?
Right.
Because generally, when they first come in and work at anywhere, business, church, doesn't matter. That job has a metamorphosis over a period of time, right? It changes, right? Because things change. And so with that, I'd like to see where are you at in this process? And let's take a look at this. Let's see your background, your education, your family. Because are you in the place to where are you the ace that's in its place? Because if not, we might need to put you in somewhere differently where you can be doing a more fruitful thing. Generally, if there's not fruit coming out of that position, then there's probably a lack of ability in that, and it's not their purpose. And so I think it's really good to take a look at that and say, what's working? What's working in your position and what's not working. And that's one of the things we do in Clear the Decks too. Right.
Well, and that to me was the biggest key for breakthrough, is that I realized, it caused me to kind of really look at my staff and say, are these aces in the right places? And to your point, when that started to become more clear and we started to kind of reorder and reorganize things as far as people, it broke everything open.
Right.
Because we had some new people in new positions, which created new energy, which created new momentum.
That's right.
And it was almost easy. I mean, it wasn't.
Yeah.
Because it's never easy to make changes, but the growth after that was easy.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's that's really good. And and sometimes you have to say, okay, everybody out of the pool.
Right.
Everybody out of the pool. Okay, let's see what's going on here. Let's take 10 minutes and let's see what's happening. Metaphorically, 10 minutes. You might bring everybody out of the pool for a month. And say, let's look and see now what's really in this water.
Right. Right.
Because you never know until everybody gets out of the pool.
That's really good. Okay, the next hurdle, political. No, there's no politics in church. Whether you're in church or whether you're in a company.
Yeah.
You run into that.
Oh, you do. And you do. And, there's one thing to have like-minded individuals with you. Okay, I think that's important. Like after I gave my life to Jesus, I would then want to hire Christians, but you can't really just hire Christians, right? Because, there's certain rules. And so what I would do is and God told me, he said, listen, it's not about you hiring Christians. In fact, I'd rather you hire non-Christians so you can bring them to me in the marketplace.
Wow.
Okay?
That's amazing.
And so what I would say, I would run ads and I would do different things. And on the bottom of my ad, I'd have John 10:10. Just John 10:10.
Yeah.
And some people who knew what that meant were like, oh man, I love that John 10:10, and then you knew, right? And other people were like, what's that mean? And so I would always tell them, say, listen, I don't care, what your political deal. I'm conservative, okay? I'm Republican. Everybody in my family is Republican except for my mother. My dog's Republican. We're all in, okay?
Yeah.
But I don't care if you're Democrat, if you're socialist, if you're communist, if you're Muslim, if you're Hindu. I don't care. But I want you to know you're going to hear about Jesus in this place, okay? And you're going to hear my political views. And if that offends you, don't come work here.
Yeah. Now, there is another aspect to the political part of it, which is, for me, it's positioning, how people position themselves politically.
Right.
Or this is what I hate. I hate gossip.
Oh yeah.
And all of this stuff, and it becomes like poison to an organization when you've got negativity and you've got kind of people start playing political games.
Right.
And it happens in the church.
It does. It happens everywhere. Right. And I'm tracking with you now in the political, because what that is a subculture. Okay. And subcultures are created, and all the good intentions of subcultures are created, but they end up being very evil. Okay. Or very they separate out, because now you're forming a subculture. Give you an example. Let's say after a meeting, after a leadership meeting, all of a sudden somebody goes to lunch and they say,
it has another meeting.
And has another meeting, right? I used to call it in our business, in sales, after we had a sales meeting, you could look outside the window and see who all was holding court.
Right. Right.
Okay? And when they hold court, they are creating a subculture. And it's never like, man, that place was awesome. We just want to go back in there and serve and just give. No, it's always, can you believe what McIntyre said? Can you believe what Eckert said? Can you believe that they put this person in that subculture develops? And they don't even realize they're in that subculture. There is your politics. Then the other thing is the posturing, right? Is the posturing. Trying to get in with good graces with the leadership or somebody in power that can benefit them. So they're not being altruistic, they're being selfish and self-centered and greedy.
Right.
And that's something that's prevalent in all aspects of wherever you're at.
And so when you're growing, when an organization is pushing and growing and developing and in the momentum, that will slow it down.
It will derail it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what you have to do is that's is that mine?
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Is that your alarm?
No, I don't know why that's doing that.
That's okay. He'll edit it.
All right. Sorry about that. Let me shut this thing off. I can't believe that. I didn't even know the thing was on. I apologize. Let me see. There, I can shut it off.
Okay.
It's off. All right. Where was I?
Derail it.
Derailing.
Derail
So
it.
yeah. So the subcultures can derail it, and that's when you have to do a surgical strike, and that's when you bring them in and say, listen, this is an opportunity for you to find your purpose.
Now, on that, and speaking to them, I have found that they're giving up their headspace to actually begin to work for the organization and to advance themselves in that. And they've actually surrendered to this backbiting, this undermining, and that's taken up their headspace,
Right.
which is incredible. So instead of seeing themselves as an overcomer or somebody that's like part of the game, they're victims.
Right.
And so you're the evil one who's now victimizing them, and you're like, no, I'm actually, this is, if you'll get on board, we're going to grow.
Yeah, and that's so good. And what I tell people is, I say, listen, there's a villain and a hero in your life, and most of the time it's you.
Right.
Okay, and one of the things that you talked to me when I first started coaching you, he said, listen, I know what the common denominator is in my life, and that was such a self-awareness and such a leadership thing to say. You said, Michael, I know the common denominator is me. Okay, and because then that positions yourself for coaching.
Right.
But if a person's coming in there always talking about the victimization that they're in, or whatever's going on, or how people are just not understanding them, misunderstood them. If you're misunderstood all the time, it's not that you're misunderstood; it's that you're not seeing it. Okay, they see you rightly.
Yeah.
It's you're the one that's not seeing yourself. You're the villain in that story. And also you can be the hero.
Yeah.
And the hero is to say, hey, if it's to be, it's up to me. I'm going to take this on. I'm going to take a hard look in the mirror with fluorescent lights on and take a look at, everything, including the emotional scars.
Right. And a lot of times with that situation and with the politics of growth, or, which is poisonous, can be poisonous, them not understanding where they are is actually detrimental to their own growth. They've stopped everything for themselves, not just for the organization, but they've stopped it for themselves.
It's true.
So it's really unfortunate. And so you would recommend just sitting them down and saying,
yeah, and
if this is going to continue.
Then this is not going to work. And if they say, look, I'm sorry, if they repent, if they have, because everybody's redeemable. Yes.
Yeah.
I truly believe that.
Yeah.
And I want to, I've been given second, third, and fourth chances, right?
Right.
I love to give second, third, and fourth chances. But at some point, if they don't see it, if they're not coachable, if they're not humbling themselves,
Yeah.
okay, in that aspect, then it's time for them to go out there and find their own purpose, because it's not here.
That's awesome. Okay, so the next hurdle, I know we've kind of gone over it, but that's okay. I may make this a two-part series. The next hurdle is motivational.
Yeah. So in my organization, we created this thing, I'm proud of this, it's called RTM squared. And it's recruit, train, manage, and then the last thing is motivate. And like my late good friend, amazing man, Zig Ziglar said, you gotta have motivation. People always say, well, Zig, motivation doesn't last. He goes, neither does a shower, and that's why you take one every day.
Wow.
Right? And so motivation is so important. We need that motivation. We need, Jesus could have walked around by himself. He put 12 people with him. Okay, he could have just picked one. Peter, I'm going to build my church on you, Peter. Petro, you're rock. And he knew, but he wanted camaraderie. He wanted to have that inspiration. I'm sure, because he was 100% man as he was 100% God.
Right.
So he needed that. Okay, in his humanness, he needed that motivation and that camaraderie and that fellowship, and he was also God, and he needed to motivate them, right? And so motivation is very important, and is so important in the church. People say, we're not here to get, we're not here to get motivated. Really, I need to be motivated, And what I love about your church is that when you have Testimonial Sunday, your people bring their own microphones.
I know. I know. It's true.
They're ready. Like, ooh. But I love that because it motivates me, because we all go through our doubting phase. We all go through our, backsliding phase a little bit. Sometimes we get caught up in the world and we don't feel as close to Jesus as we should. And so when you hear that testimony, it motivates me. When somebody talks about their, because we're all the same. Yeah. We just put on different things, but we're still the same. If you peel the image back and what we're carrying, we all look the same, and we all go through the same struggles. So motivation is so important. Yeah. You've got to have it.
You've got to have buy-in.
Because nobody wants to call up and talk to a funeral director.
Yeah.
They want to talk to somebody that's got life.
Right, that understands the vision.
Yes.
Write the vision, make it plain so that others can run with it.
That's right.
Yeah. And that's the thing that I found that is the game changer. I had a conversation yesterday with social media, someone in social media that's helping us. And when I explained to him the big picture of what we're doing, he's just like, now that's something I can really get behind. I am so excited about this. And so that motivating factor, now, if that weren't there, he'd still be doing the stuff.
Right. But not with the same passion.
Not with the same passion.
Right.
So now you add the passion to the salary, to the structure, and it makes people run faster.
Right. Because
an accelerator.
That's right. Because people always say they do work for the money, and it's not true. They do work to be acknowledged. Number one, to be acknowledged, to be loved, to be seen. 90% of life is just showing up. The other 10%, though, to separate the wheat from the chaff, okay, is to be seen once you show up.
Right.
And so how you seen, and then if you're motivated in that, and if you have somebody that's going to come in and pour into you and love you and say, hey, listen, Tracy, that was an amazing sermon. We all, and if we phone one in, they got to also say, hey, listen, I know you can do better.
Right. Which you've said to me before. Okay, thank you. All right, the last one, the resource hurdle.
Oh, you talking about money?
Yeah.
Are we speaking M-O-N-E-Y? Equilibrius unium? Cheddar, dead presidents.
And this to me, CEOs see this as the biggest hurdle. They don't see the others as being the bigger hurdle. They see this because they're always like, I can only go so far as my money.
Yeah.
I will only grow as far as my money.
Yeah. So what I say to that is money is a fulcrum. Okay. It's a tool that God gives us to use, and we should steward it wisely and do it well with that, and not be wise as a serpent with that. But also, there's people that get it, even CEOs, even big companies get into a poverty mindset. And so they bring in this lack, right? That if, from the old movie, if you build it, they'll come. Mm-hmm. And so oftentimes, I remember one of the first persons I in church, I was coaching, and, I'm only 8 years into this Christianity, or not even that, maybe 6 years. And their biggest contributor just left the church. Their biggest tither just left the church, and it was a decent amount of money. And I said, man, first of all, you should never know that. I said that number one, the right hand should know what the left hand's doing. You don't need to know. Whether somebody gives $5 a month or $5 million a month, it's none of your concern. What your concern is to focus on the prize, is to save these souls, is to make sure people are staying anointed. And how do they do that? They get with the anointed one, who is Jesus Christ. So with that money situation, so many churches get wrapped around the axle about money, into where it's all there, okay? And all they have to do is bump the table and it'll come in. But they act like they can't do it. And quite honestly, it's the proverbial cart before the horse. If you don't go in there and go in and say, okay, here's where our vision is, here's where we're going to go, God will provide. If the Bible says He'll give you all the desires of your heart if you are obedient to Him.
Right.
And if you're an obedient leader, obedient pastor as yourself, it'll fill in itself. That will happen.
Okay, one of the things that I've heard you say is you've said, I want you to plan and I want you to operate like the money's already there.
Absolutely, 100%.
And so changing for a CEO or a builder to change their mindset and say, I'm not going to think like I'm poor or like I'm in lack.
Right.
I'm actually going to start building like it's already there.
That's right.
It's kind of like stepping out, the Raiders of the Lost Ark. Remember when he stepped out and there was no stair there, but it just the abyss?
Right.
But when he stepped out, it met him.
It met him. That's exactly right. It's the hardest thing to do.
Hardest thing to do.
Especially depends on how you were raised, too. If you were raised in a poverty mindset or your father or your mother had lack, because that's instilled with us. And so, again, if you ask for your father, if you ask it, he will not give you a rock. If you ask for bread, he's not going to give you a rock.
Right.
And so, as a pastor, as a church person, there's always tension with money. There's always tension. How do we get without because for me, it's like I was always the money guy. So people would always say, McIntyre, would you come up and make the ask? Yeah, I don't care.
Yeah.
And I didn't. I enjoyed doing it, but after a while, I was like, hey, I can do something. Not just make it rain, But I like that. But and I think what happens is some pastors they feel that tension in there, and that tension to me is just the enemy saying, don't do it, because all you have to do is ask and you shall receive. Seek the kingdom of God first, and all these things shall be added unto you. And so with that, it doesn't mean, okay, listen, we're going to buy a $10 million building and we got $1.95 in the bank. Okay, don't be stupid. Right. So you've got to have some practical, and that's why you have other leaders around you. But you do, there is tension in that process, but when you do have tension, it produces fruit. That's why you have a mother and a father. Okay? Because God created man and woman to have tension in the family, so you can raise these children properly. And just like with money, there's tension there. But if you walk into that tension and say, okay, I'm going to own this, I'm going to be in this place, the money will come. It will come.
Well, one of the things that you have done is and I've watched you do it, not just with us, but you've done it with others. You're a gold harvester. So you'll say that there are all of these areas that are untouched. The gold is there. You're just not pulling it out. And I think that goes back to you being a salesman and realizing there's territories or there's regions or there's areas where we've got to harvest this. And it's like, well, I've already harvested the first layer. Wait, there's another way to do it. We can harvest another layer. And for you, it may be there's another product out there that we can sell to the very same people that we've already sold to. Or, you find another way to make it work. And so I think thinking differently as a CEO of a church or a CEO of an organization, there's still gold out there. And if you've hit or maxed out your tipping point or your resources, you've taught me there's still gold in those fields.
Right, there is. It's like I studied Disney for a long time and had a lot of money in Disney. And what I found, like in 1984, when they changed CEOs, the new CEO, I can't think of his name right now, came in, and there was such low-hanging fruit. I mean, they hadn't even...
Eisner,
yes, Michael Eisner.
Yeah.
He came in there, and the low-hanging fruit was huge. It was huge. You didn't have to get out of his chair, and he could pluck it, okay? He took that company from a small fledgling company to where, you know, they ended up buying ABC, they bought Pixar, you know, $800 billion mammoth company out here. And now, I don't always agree with the politics of that, but what he did do, and, you know, he left it, but he did such an amazing job in to hit that fruit. And so what I see when I come into places like Storehouse or wherever I'm at or a business, I see the low-hanging fruit that they don't see because they get so tied up in what the day-to-day and what the board says or what the leadership says or what the immediate needs are. They don't see that low-hanging fruit that's right there. Like I see 3 people here, which I won't say, but I see 3 people here that we should be doing an EP real soon here.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
but I won't go into the details on
Yeah.
that.
Well, let me tell you, this has been amazing. There's so much gold here that we have, speaking of gold, just so many nuggets that you've given today. And I'm so thankful for it. And just understanding how to, when you hit a tipping point, you know you're there, so much gold here that you gave us to help kind of push us over the edge. So, Michael, your book, tell them how they can get your book.
Well, let me just say this first. What I love about you and the way you show up, Tracy, is really kingdom. And you truly walk out. You do, you know, you walk the talk. You know, a lot of people will walk it, but you walk it out. You do it, you show up big, and it's impressive. And I love how you show up with your team and how you show up in the body. It's very impressive because you're the real deal, as everybody knows that's ever been here. And so, yeah, the book is Next Level Life. It's on Amazon. You can check it out, and yeah, or you can go to our website at themichaelmcintyre.com.
And your next NLE is in Florida.
Yes, we're going to West Palm Beach. Woo!
That's so exciting.
I've already got people over here at Storehouse. I'm flying my wife down to West Palm Beach. So rock on. Just go to our website and you can register.
Right. It's brilliant. You don't want to miss either one of these. The resources that you have, it'll help you grow as a leader. It's an amazing testimony. And also NLE is also an incredible weekend away, which is fun, but the experience will definitely take you to the next level. So thank you so much for joining us today on our podcast, and make sure that you listen to us for our next show. Thanks for listening to my podcast. For more revelatory resources, go to tracyeckert.com.